Greetings, Doctor. I'm Lim An. Today, I'm going to present my findings regarding the ESP text analysis. To begin with, let me briefly explain about the content of the presentation of today. So, we all know that syllabus is meant to be assessed and examined in terms of the design to make sure that it will achieve the desired goals and objectives. Therefore, in this session, we are going to examine and analyze the text which suits the ESP community of lawyers. The text chosen is a book named Plain English for Lawyers, the 5th edition, which is written by Dr. Richard C. Dick. So, English for Lawyers is also known as legal English. It is a technical language specifically designed for legal professionals. This encompasses judges, lawyers, attorneys, and you name it. These professionals are required to learn English from a technical context in order for them to become successful in the field of law. There are many resources that support this notion, ranging from quality research findings, educational websites, to netizens' comments in Reddit and forum. It seems that everyone would agree with the importance and significance of English language in the field of law. Even in Malaysia context, students who wish to pursue bachelor's degree in law will have to accomplish at least band 5 in Malaysia University English test, which is GRANT. So why is it important? To exemplify, legal English is significant in relation to legal writing and the drafting of written text, such as contracts, court pleadings and judgments, legislation, and legal correspondence. So this is just the tip of the iceberg. English is needed to facilitate many legal activities. And with the rise of globalization, legal English demand has reached its peak, as it is essential to deal with English-speaking clients as well as other legal professionals on a daily basis. When I first went through this book, it seems to have a high standard, especially in terms of the content and task. This indicates that it is an informative reading material that would help learners to develop and sharpen their language skills. In this book, you will be exposed to the most frequently encountered grammatical patterns, structural words, and also lexical items that were commonly found in all disciplines of law. There are also numerous exercises based on authentic texts from different genres used in the legal profession. Since ESP focuses on specific and purposeful uses of language, so it is very common that the materials designed are learner-centered and related to their reality. As you can see over here, there are 9 chapters in this book, and each chapter will teach a different topic. Most of the topics are about writing skills, for example, short sentences, punctuation, and many more. Now, I'm going to show you the text that I've chosen, which are expected from the book for the text analysis purpose based on the principles, approaches, and methods of ESP. So there are 3 texts altogether. First, omit surplus words. Second, the passive can create ambiguity. And lastly, avoid illegal variation. So this is the first text. If you notice, unlike ordinary textbooks with tedious passages and exercises, the book itself provides real and authentic text. This could be seen through the narration at the beginning of the article entitled Omit Surplus Words, which illustrates a real-life experience. As a beginning lawyer, I was assigned to assist an older man, a business litigator. He hated verbosity. When I would bring him what I thought was a finished piece of work, he will read it quietly and take out his pen. As I watched over his shoulder, he would strike out whole lines, turn clauses into phrases, and turn phrases into single words. One day at lunch, I asked him how he did it. He shrugged and said, "It is not hard, just omit the surplus words." Instead of introducing the objectives or learning outcomes of the chapter, the author shared a real story to prompt learners' interest, so they will examine this chapter in depth. It's actually a great way to engage the readers or learners to read the remaining text. In this article, the author intended to utilize skill-oriented approach to help targeted ESP learners to develop their receptive skill, which is the reading skill, as compared to other disciplines of English teaching, which stress on skimming and scanning for reading skills. This article encourages the learners to eliminate redundant words by introducing them to the concept of working words and do words. So from here, we can tell the differences between EGP and ESP, as the learners learn different reading strategy depend on their needs. All right, so EGP learners acquired skimming and scanning, so they could quickly identify the correct answers for reading comprehension questions within the time range, especially during an examination. On the other hand, ESP learners study other techniques that will benefit them particularly. And this reading strategy can actually help legal professionals to deal with lengthy texts such as contracts, pleading, and so on, which in turn help them to save valuable time and, of course, increase their efficiency and productivity. The learners could practice this reading technique using the exercise given, which consists technical vocab such as motion, settlement, proceedings, and more. These technical vocabularies have specialized and restricted meanings in the field of law, and the meanings could be different across disciplines. Take, for instance, the word motion could mean movement in the field of physics, but in the field of law, it means an application for a rule or order of court. It is also worth mentioning that the task designed here requires learners to process authentic text. What is meant by that? It means these texts are not specifically or purposefully produced for language teaching or learning initially. You can observe the statement here. Some of them might be extracted from real legal documents. And through this practice, the learners will have to analyze how meaning is encoded and decoded from the written discourses. In the next article entitled Passive Can Create Ambiguity, the author employed task-oriented approach in which learners are required to use active voice instead of passive voice. In this approach, learners will perform tasks inspired by real-life communicative activities in professional settings, while ordinary English learners use active and passive voice alternately. These lawyer professionals must be cautious in choosing between them because the bad choice will be fatal in the court. It is notable that most of the legal situations are not seen as black and white, in which everything is clear-cut. So most legal questions are argued in shades of gray, where the judges must choose the best answer from several plausible options. That's when active and passive voice come into play. The author exemplified by stating that one could be fought an issue using truncated passive, which hide the identity of the actor. For instance, the plaintiff's teeth were knocked out. This could eventually affect the court's decision on whether the defendant is found guilty or otherwise. In this chapter, the exercise provided is an extension of the previous practice in which learners are required to omit surplus words, if you can remember. before changing the sentences into active voices. This would help to consolidate the learner's impressions and access their knowledge pertaining to the lesson taught. In fact, one of the biggest strengths of this book is that most of the practices or exercises found in the subsequent chapters are related to the previous ones. This is extremely useful to scaffold learners' understandings of language. So don't take my word for it. Study shows that a well-designed material is supposed to provide learners with the opportunity to get familiar with a variety of language samples accordingly. Last but not least, the author applied a skill-based approach in creating the passage entitled Avoid Illegal Variation, which aims to drill on the learner's writing skills. Remember how we, as AGP learners, were penalized for using the same words constantly in essay writing due to limited vocabulary range. The teacher will give us extremely low mark because of the vocabulary while writing an essay. But this article suggests otherwise. It advises the readers or learners to avoid using sophisticated words, even in a close proximity. Most of the readers of legal documents read them not because they want to, but they have to. Missing any important detail could lead them to disastrous loss. However, the attention span is most likely to be shortened by fertile language quirks. That's why you could often hear people complain about how they had reading legal documents because they need to constantly check the meaning of several technical terms to get a thorough understanding of the whole documents, or they may fall into the trap. Hence, the article points out that illegal variation is particularly vexing in the technical legal writing and should be avoided at all costs. It is conspicuous that needs analysis plays an imperative role in ESP course, which is to determine the gap between what learners already know and what they need to know. In general, needs analysis can be viewed as the systematic collection and analysis of all information necessary for defining and validating a defensible syllabus or curriculum. In this case, the author was clearly aware of the target learners' writing habit and their ability before developing the material. This text actually shed light for the learners so they will be conscious about the usage of words in their writings and make sure they will conform well to the requirements of the book test. So as you can see over here, the exercise given has once again required the learners to omit some passwords, which is learned in chapter 1 to help them remember better. To conclude, it is irrefutable that material development is one of the important factors that determine the success of language teaching process. This ESP learning material offers high flexibility with its modular design in which each and every chapter being self-contained. So learners are able to proceed with their studies even if they missed several lessons. This book is remarkable due to the fact that it can be used for individual study or classroom teaching. It is obvious that ESP learners have other obligations and duties to be fulfilled in their daily lives. Unlike full-time students, they usually study all day in the classroom. But yes, e-learners is a different case. Hence, they could study this book at their own pace and work independently on topics which they find particularly relevant to them. Although the main objective of this book is to guide the readers or learners to apply plain English appropriately in legal writing, ESP teachers could still exploit it as a teaching material by employing various teaching methodologies. For instance, learners are required to role play as attorney and use active and passive voice in reading, which is in the chapter 2 just now that I presented. That way, they will be able to understand the differences better. And speaking of which, it is also important to bear in mind that designing tailor-made ESP materials by the teacher is a time-consuming activity, and it is not very economical. Therefore, designing them from scratch is best regarded as the last resort, which means it's not recommended. What ESP teachers can do is that they could adapt materials originally designed for other purposes by using strategies such as deleting irrelevant material or simplifying and modifying materials to make them either more interesting or more accessible to the learners. Nevertheless, ESP does not require specialized language and content. The activity that students engage in is of higher priority. It is also pivotal to point out that the balance of language skills being taught in ESP may be different from that found in general courses. So that's the reason why most of the topics found in this book revolves around writing skills. In essence, the ESP materials developed should match the learner's needs and wants, as well as align to the principles of ESP language learning. They should be developed in a way that provides flexibility and coherence of connection to maximize the learning outcome. And that brings us to the end. Before I end the presentation, I would like to have a word or two about my opinions on this particular assignment. To be completely honest, it has really opened up my mind and provided insightful information pertaining to ESP, as I have done a lot of research in order for me to complete this assignment. I'm truly grateful for such opportunity, and of course, I would like to express my deepest gratitude to my lecturer for the guidance and interesting lectures. Thank you for your attention. Goodbye.